November 16, 2,
That's good to know, right?
6, 7, 7, 7, 0, 1, 3, 9, 2. Please enter your access code followed by the pound or hash sign.
Wait, I missed that.
You can get it next time. When this ends changing?
Wait, I don't know.
November 3rd.
Please enter your access code followed by the
Wait, I'm going to call it again. Forgive me. Hold on.
Let me know. I'll pass out the assignments.
The number you are dialing will be changing on November 16, 2, 6, 6, 7, 7, 7, 0, 1, 3, 9, 2. Please enter your access code.
Wait, when did they say it was changing?
Leslie, what's your Hebrew name?
What's the access code?
It's very interesting. So I'm Syrian, and originally it was Bahia, but then when I went to Flatbush, they changed it to Batya.
Oh.
What's the code?
Okay, the code
That's
is
a beautiful name.
9513
And Brian, you're the Hebrew name?
757
Yisroel Moshe?
pound.
Nice.
Pound.
Beautiful. Ladies,
Access code
ladies.
accepted. You are the only
Turn to ladies.
Leslie, so I put where their markers. I think they're
Okay.
Done.
okay, we'll be starting in a minute.
Who usually comes
In
to
a
the call-in? What's her name? Lisa?
Elisa's the one that we hear from. And maybe
She doesn't have. She doesn't watch the Facebook.
she doesn't do internet and Facebook. She does WhatsApp.
I'm in. Did you finish?
Did you say maybe? I've heard.
I thought you were finished, but I couldn't tell. I'm getting in my 100 a day.
Not so much
I've heard the name Bahia before.
Joseph Campbell.
Bahia.
It's Syrian?
It's Arabic. Yeah.
Arabic?
He was the one that
Yes.
And they think
He's like the Godfather.
No, because
He's
then
the
when I went to
godfather of
Flatbush,
Godfather.
it wasn't acceptable as a Hebrew name because it was
surprised you
Arabic.
didn't
So they
Was
switched
your,
might be in the, like,
are you named
No,
after
Yumi
like
is
your
a different
grandpa?
story.
Not your, because they named after people who were alive, right?
Yeah,
So
my
Leslie,
great-grandmother.
you
Great-grandmother.
yes. They didn't, her name was
don't know if
Bahia, that's all they knew was her name was Bahia?
I didn't get one.
I think it's flat, but it's still cold.
Versus what?
I don't know, maybe she had a
This one
like a
might be
Hebrew,
more
that was it?
It's okay.
That's interesting. No, I've heard it before, I just, yeah, okay.
All right.
Okay, all right, start. This is the story of Yutes Kislev. Neither of you were here yet.
I got the pre before on the
You
car.
got
Remember came and you want some seltzer?
I have it.
Oh.
I didn't remember the second way. The first way is to close yourself off. Third way is to mashpia on the environment, and the second
Well,
way.
we're going to talk about that tonight. Okay. It's interesting. I was thinking ahead because I have a lot of pressure on me from these two to come up with the next
Excuse me, because see, we have the
For good
product
reason.
of my hard work.
Right, it's very
For good reason.
to come up with what's going to be the next one before we do the next one. So the next one, I started looking at a mimer from the Rebbe. So we're going to learn a mimer from the Rebbe
For
after this.
Chavdal Tavis.
Avdal Tevis? No, Yutes Kislev. No, that's what we're on Yutes Kislev. Everyone knows what Yutes Kislev is?
I do
Leslie?
now.
You do now?
No,
No, you don't. It's the Rosh Hashanah of Chassidus.
Okay.
That's what we call it.
Who do we have?
It's
Rabbi
the-
Groner there?
It's the time of the redemption of the Alter Rebbe from prison. And with him, he said, when I was released, Chassidus was released. Because, everything that goes down, we talked about tuning in on frequencies, right?
Right.
Everything that's going on down here, in the air down here below, is just a mild repercussion of what's going on up above. And so the Alter Rebbe said that there was a kitrug, a prosecution up above, upstairs against Chassidus, and that's why I was in prison. And when I was saying the kapitel in Tehillim, Pada B'Shalom Nafshi, on that very moment after I said those words, my release was announced. The kitrug was over, the prosecution was over, and so I wrote down. I was looking for like what we're going to start next week, and the Rebbe says a very astounding thing. It's a Rosh Hashanah, the first Rosh Hashanah. Why is it Rosh Hashanah? What was created on Rosh Hashanah?
Human beings.
The human being, right? On the sixth day of creation, a human being. So Rosh Hashanah is the creation of the human being, and the Rebbe, our Rebbe says, Rosh Hashanah of Chassidus is the bringing down to earth the whole tachlis of what a human being is about, which is the Torah of Chassidus. The Torah of Chassidus is a vehicle, a tool for embodying, for each and every one of us to embody, how to embody what we were created for in the first place, which is to rectify the world, to bring the presence of God in the world. So that's what art's our subject. So I'm just going to very quickly review what we learned the last time, and those who are here could jump in. This Sicha, as you see at the top, is in Parshas Vayishlach, right? And in Vayishlach it says when that Vayishlach Yaakov sent Malachim to Esau. And Rashi says on that, Malachim Mamash, that they were really Malachim. So the Mezritcha Magid, who himself, we've learned in the Sicha, has an interesting connection with Yud-Tes Kislev. The Mezritcha Magid, who was the teacher of the Alter Rebbe, and held the Alter Rebbe to be his Talmud Mufrach, his special Talmud, he told the Alter Rebbe that you and I, meaning he, the Magid and the Alter Rebbe, have this day in common. And what was it? The Magid then passed away on Yud-Tes Kislev, after having told the Rebbe that he shared this day with him. So the Sicha opens with a drush of the Mezritcha Magid on this pasuk, Malachim Mamash.
Excuse me.
You just said what Rashi said, and what?
The Maggid told the Alter Rebbe that they share Yud-Tes Kislev, and then he passed away on
passed
Yud-Tes
away.
Kislev. What did he tell the Alter Rebbe that they share Yud-Tes Kislev about?
That's all I know.
What?
That's all I know.
Oh.
That's all that's said in the Sicha, and that's all I've ever heard. So, what the Mezritcha Magid's drush on Malachim Mamish is the following: that the Ruchnius would stay with Yaakov, and the Mamash, the substantial, would go to Esau. And the Rebbe in the Sicha asks a question on that. I mean, the whole idea of sending shlichus to Esau is to, what we say in Hebrew, mevarer, to rectify him. And rectification has to come through some acquisition of some spiritual dimension that didn't exist before. So what does it mean that the spirit, the Ruchnius, stays with Yaakov and the Mamish goes to Esau? So the Rebbe says the way to understand that, it can't contradict the first one, meaning that these Malachim actually did go there, right? The meaning in which this is the introduction to the Sicha is that when a person interacts with the mamashas of the world, with the substantiality, the coarseness, the humrius and the gashmius of the world, one has to keep the ruchnius intact, because otherwise the gashmius can attack you instead of you attacking and rectifying the gashmius. So the ruchnius has to stay with Yaakov. Yaakov is Yisroel, the Jewish neshama. When we interact with the world, when we interact with the world, we have to bring our ruchnius to the world, and so the world doesn't attack us, but rather we bring out the godliness which is latent in the world. Doreen?
Yes.
Sorry. Just moving for logistical purposes.
All right, so that's point
Does it say
number
how
one.
we do
Everybody
that?
got that point?
Do we
Well,
say
we're going to, yeah, that's good. Now, this is good. We're about the
Not so easy.
2/3 into the Sicha. Now, he explained, he introduced an idea which Chevra brought up before. There's two ways of doing this. And they're embodied in two expressions, right? Well, one is Kol ma'asecha l'shem shemayim. All of your deeds should be for the sake of heaven. And the other is V'chol derechecha deyehu. In everything you do, you should know Him, know God. And what we've explained so far, we've just touched on it, and we'll go deeper in it now. Kol ma'asecha l'shem shemayim. Everything you do should be for the sake of shemayim, for the sake of elevating the world, for the sake of bringing godliness into the world. And the other one, B'chol derechecha deyehu, is that you and that world are, the godliness and the world are not two separate things that you're bringing yourself to, but that you experience them. Physicality, emotionality, all the affairs of life are really godly emanations in the first place. So that's b'chol derechecha de'egu. Everything that you do, He, God, and godliness is there. And so your perception is there isn't a him and a me and a that. There's a oneness. And that's the beginning of his explanation of the difference between the two, and that's the beginning of the explanation of the difference between what happened before Yud Tes Kislev and after Yud Tes Kislev, because there were revelations, right? We had the Zohar, we had the Kislev Arizal, we had the Baal Shem Tov, right? And the Baal Shem Tov really starts what we call Chassidus. But there are shlavim, there are levels, ratchets. Shlavim, no? Ratchets in the evolution of Chassidus, from Kabbalah to levels of ratcheting in Kabbalah, and then the Baal Shem Tov takes it another step. Baal Shem Tov says this Kabbalah has to be expressed in such a way that it will wake up the people, because the Baal Shem Tov is famously quoted as saying that the Jewish people in Europe had fallen into a faint. They were observing mitzvahs, but with a coldness and with a faint. The situation was poor gashmis and was poor in ruchnis. So he injected something special, and that injection is the beginning of Chassidus, and that falls to the Nagid. Now comes the Alter Rebbe, and this is in the language of our Rebbe, the Rosh Hashanah of Chassidus, right? The whole the human being of Chassidus, if you could say such a thing, comes alive on Yud Tes Kislev.
Can I add something that I read?
Sure.
I think I read it in the Good Chumash for Parshas Shmos. It says, why does Hashem call the Jewish people's names all the time? Because it wakes them up, because to say. And so when Yisrael Baal Shem Tov was sent down here to this world, it says in the Tanya that Hashem saw that tzaddikim were very few, so He planted them in each generation. So He planted Yisrael Baal Shem Tov because they were in the faint. Yisrael is the name of the nation. And He said Yisrael, you say their name.
Right.
That's what I hear.
Beautiful.
It's also like Sarah of Rachel, Leah,
Oh, wow.
Abraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov.
Wow.
It's also interesting.
You take that one to the bank.
Think about the rollout of the parshas, right? We're in Parshas Toildos. The family.
That's what they told
The
us.
family starts to grow, and now in this parsha there are offspring, and in the next parsha those offspring Vayetze, they go out further, and what's the next one? After Vayetze is Vayeshev, and they settle. So there's even the Vayishlach. Then they go out, and then they acquire a mission, and they're sent out by the Mishaleach, and then Vayeshev, and then they sit and they accomplish. So there's a lot of ways that this really rolls up. Okay, with all that, we can start today's test. But before we start, I'd like to give anybody here an opportunity, and everybody who's out there who wants to, an opportunity to bring to the table any mishaberachs that you want. In general, I want to tell you that this whole shir that started more than 4 years ago, owes its life and livelihood to the neshama of Shlomi ben Moshe Bundi, who's no longer with us, and this shir in general is dedicated to Elias and neshama of Bundi. Any other names?
We also do Refuah Shalema for Charna Alexandra, Bas Chana Esther.
Charna Alexandra, Bas Chana Esther.
It should be zechus for those who come, who need a shidduch.
Amen.
Everyone should be able to find their shidduch this year.
Amen.
My mother's sister passed away last Tuesday very suddenly. She's a younger sister. So she's this Torah learning. She was such a Torah learner. She was such a scholar. She raised 9 kids all by herself. Wow. She was a widow at 40. And she was really, really smart and studied Torah and was very spiritual. And she knew everything. So this learning of Torah should be in her. Also, she just got up from Shiva today.
Her name?
Rachel bat Yirmiyahu Meir.
Rachel bat Yirmiyahu Meir.
For Amalia Rachel Bas Rivka Chana.
Amalia Rachel Bas Rivka Chana.
Yes.
This is
someone on Facebook just.
This is Refuah Shalema?
Refuah Shalema. Yeah.
All right. And the other thing we say, housekeeping, is the way the shir goes. I usually start pretty much all the time, but we'll ask people who want to read to read. and I'll help translate if need be. Okay, so we're on ice test.
Okay.
This is the news about Yom Tov Kislev. This expression, anybody knows where that expression comes from? The well springs will spread to the outside.
On Rosh Hashanah. The Baal Shem Tov went, on Rosh Hashanah, the Baal Shem Tov went up to the Heichal of Mashiach, and he says, "No,
when will you come?
When are you coming?"
And Mashiach answers him. When your wellspring,
like an elephant,
and this is going. This wellspring is going to be very important. The difference between Bechol Darak when you are totally immersed in the thing, and that everything should be L'Shem Shemayim. It's your Mainusecha. The difference between the spring and the water that comes from the spring is the source. So basically, what the Baal Shem Tov what the Mashiach is telling you, not only your teachings, but the very source of your teachings, the spring from which they spring, has to be spread out. And it has to be spread out in the conduct of not just the world at large, but olam cotton in every single person. So we have to, what the purpose of the Baal Shem Tov basically is telling the Alter Rebbe, what you've been designed to do is to enable every Jewish person to live where everything is kul echad. That there is nothing but ein od milvado. That's your mission. In that language that said your wellspring should spread out to the very outside. Mudgoshim shnei inyonim. There is emphasized two aspects. One, she'amaynis atzmo nimshechim bebechinas chutz. This is what I said. Not just the water, but the springs themselves. The springs should be put inside every Jewish person. V'lei rak she'hamaynis poilim bebechinas. Not just that the spring should have an effect, but the spring should be there in every person.
Like Ad Shetehes Shel Hevet Olam Aleha.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes. Beis. Secondly, Amshechosam Shel Hamaynos Bebechinas Chutza, this spreading out of the fountainhead, into the outside, he ba'oifen is in a manner the yofutzu. Yofutzu means hispashtus, hochi gedoyle berachova, a very, very deep, big, and widespread, until there's no place which is free of them. This is, in a nutshell, a mission of Chabad, right? At least one aspect of the mission of Chabad. That no place in the world should be free of the influence of Chabad.
Like Coca-Cola.
Right? Like Coca-Cola, right? Coca-Cola, right? You
never heard that?
Yeah, I've heard it a number of times. I've heard it actually from
Starbucks.
a couple of businessmen in my history that said, I was in blah blah, and I needed this, and I just before the internet was so developed, you're looking at phone book, Chabad.
Right.
And then you find it. Huh?
Chabad of Hong Kong.
At the keynote the other night. The keynote
speaker was amazing.
Yeah. David Lichtenstein.
Rabbi, no, the Livish guy.
Yeah.
Who gave the speech.
Amazing.
What do you call it? He said, the Chabad is the Hatzola.
Yeah.
That's so funny.
It's the Hatzola all over the world.
Oh, that's so cute. I like that.
And he was interesting because he has an interesting background himself. He's not a Chabadnik by any means.
No.
But he recognizes. And he's a shtickle Talmud Chacham as well. Yeah. Okay. So the idea is twofold. Number one, what is the magic? The magic isn't drinking the water. The magic is encompassing the source of the water. Right? And where does the magic have to take effect? That no place should be free of them.
Or void. No?
Void of them, right. He's translated. There should be no place where the waters haven't touched, haven't reached. So this is a must. It demands that wherever there's a limitation to one's influence, that's not chutzah.
That's what?
That's not chutzah. Outside. We haven't really got there yet. right? I mean, it was so interesting that the theme of this. I guess it's no accident. The theme of it. First of all, the shluchim are, even though it's not Parshas Vayishlach, the Kinnis of Shluchim often takes place because Shliach, right? The Shluchim, right? And the whole theme of it was basically this: it isn't enough to just touch.
Is that why they picked that weekend?
No, Rosh Chodesh Kislev was something.
No, the doc just...
Why they picked
Oh,
it.
wow.
Yes.
All right.
What are you talking about? It has to do with Rosh Chodesh
Parshas
Kislev.
Chayesara.
Oh.
It's both.
It happened to me. Yeah,
It's Rosh Chodesh Kislev and
It's
and
always
Parshas Chayesara.
interconnected.
It's often
I
connected.
love when the dots connect.
It's often connected with
You
Parshas
can
Vayishlach.
put that in your manifesto and smoke it.
So, until you've touched it all,
Almost as good as
Wow.
Staples.
That's a really good one.
You were here for Staples?
That was
I
a
don't
big
remember.
revelation.
I don't remember Staple.
The store, the office supply
Right.
store. So
That's really crazy. I don't know who you are or where you come from, but that's
Now, how does this? What does this have to do with us? To our ordinary gut people at this table and out there. Every single Jewish person has a fountain, a spring. Shehi hanashama, hagazura metachas kiseh hakavod, a soul which is carved out from underneath the holy throne. Va'oi, that's an expression you see note 42. You see it there, it doesn't tell you exactly where it originates, but that's okay. Va'oi l'mayla mezeh, and even more, yet it's carved out from the throne, but it's rooted even deeper in what's called tahira ilah, or tahira, the sublime or holy purity,
Oh, say that I made that.
which we say.
No, we're not made that. I mean, Neshama.
Neshama shemasad
Right.
tahira hi.
Yeah.
That's where it originates, right? And Atavarasa, then it comes down into the world of Riyadh, one level after another. You're familiar with this, right?
Right.
One level after another of descent. Right? Huh?
What?
it's a Duggish hey, you have to pronounce them like that.
So this gets back to the Malachim Mamish, that the fountainhead has, not just the water, the fountainhead, the essence of your soul has to be revealed even in physical things. Which on their own we call chutza. They're outside of you. Outside the boundary of your soul. And the revelation of the fountainhead of the soul in the physical world. It has to be in a manner to the outside, and in the two ways we said above. One, not just that the soul dominates or rules, right? Like moyach shalit alalev, as we learn in Tanya, that the godly soul should dominate the animal soul. But not only that, but the godly soul should penetrate every aspect of creation, so that every aspect of creation is imbued with the essence of the Maya, the essence of the fountain. So here we come on. So the void is not just kol ma'asecha l'shem shemayim, for the sake of heaven. It should be higher than this. That they themselves, every physical thing in the planet, on the planet, and in all the worlds, should be aware of its essential connection to God and behave that way. That's in all of your ways you should know Him. Every single thing should know Him in every way that they do, from the basic electrons to the most complicated cultures and all the worlds up above. Should know, be aware. I think the electrons probably more aware than we are, because they don't fight it at all. And it's actually brought up, I said it's not about electrons, but about animals. Animals have an essential connection. They don't second guess and wonder. They don't have any questions in Amuna. They
don't have questions.
Period.
They don't have questions because they just are.
What do you mean they don't have questions?
They just are. They just are.
Yeah, but won't the nature of animals also change when Mashiach comes?
In what respect?
Pigs will become kosher.
I mean, like that.
Nice.
That,
I see you.
That also, the lion will be a lot more subdued.
I hear what you're saying. The consciousness, in a sense, changes. Yeah.
Right.
Consciousness changes, but that itself is just they go. That's just they go with the flow.
They're going with the
They're
flow.
always going with the flow. There's no difference between them and the flow. They're
Right.
like just part of the water. If the water changes, they change. There's no separation.
Same by animals?
Animals. Yeah.
But they're not
We're the
changing
only
the flow,
creature
they're going
in the
with
entirety of creation,
Without
from the
it.
subatomic particles to the world of the sealers, that gets messed up. We got free choice for whatever reasons we can discuss at another time. But the whole point is everything should be so penetrated with awareness of God that it just is, and not shame this for the sake of that, or for the sake of that. Everything should be beholden, as we said above, and I mentioned at the beginning of the class in Sif Vav. Beis, secondly, Shehespashtis neshama v'aguf, the flow of the neshama in the body, the inyanov, and all of the affairs it has to do with, u'ba'ofen shel yafutzu, has to be in a manner of spreading out. Hispashtis bilti mugbelas, it has to be without limit. And actually, this was also one of the themes of last night's keynotes, that doubt is the big limiter, anxiety is the big limiter, fear is the big limiter, fear is the mind killer, right? So when one is penetrated, immersed in the reality of Hashem, there is no doubt, there is no anxiety, you're always connected. And when you're always connected, there's no limit to what you can do, because you're not second-guessing yourself, and you're not saying, is this right or wrong, why isn't anybody helping me? All the things
because you're connected to
that
God.
I say when
there's a greater, there's a higher power.
Not a higher power. You are the power.
Right.
Or the other way around.
I'm saying you're
the
connected.
power is you. The power,
You're connected.
Yeah, you're connected.
Except
You're
Michael
connected.
and Tom.
But the power is you.
Power is
Right.
that's the name of person.
To such an extent that there's no place for feeling the body.
It's like maybe a runner. When the runner gets into the
zone.
You don't
Into
even
the
feel
zone.
your body.
That's exactly it. In the zone, right? Remember we gave the story of the Alter Rebbe and the salt?
Yeah.
It was a
Said
very
it last
short
week.
story that the Alter Rebbe had a visitor, and all of the Alter Rebbe's students in Haveda wanted to prepare a dish for this chashiva guest, and they all prepared. It was a beautiful setting. And then each one of them, they remembered that they forgot to put the salt. So they all put salt in it.
Oh.
And the guests, they pushed it away, and the Alter Rebbe says, what's the problem with it? What's the problem?
It was all the same to him.
It was all the same thing. It was all the same thing. There's no body and soul. There's just...
Sorry, I can't help you with that on your Mac.
That's all right. I wasn't asking.
Hashem can't help you now, Esther.
What just happened here? Bye. Okay.
How are you supposed to get the whole world to be integrated? And
One
connected
piece
on
at a
this
time.
level?
If you give, let's put it this way. You have some trillion amount of cells in the body, right? Each one's getting the message that's appropriate for the cell. But the appropriate message for each of the cells is also a message that's appropriate for how the cell is going to interact with every other cell. So if I'm just using that as a metaphor, right? So if we all get the message that's designed for us, because we're all different, but sort of globbed on top of that message that's unique to me is the message that we're all getting the same, which is that this is all divinity, this is all God, and this is all a message from God as to how you, with your particular code, need to behave in order to bring about the interoperability so that the whole creation operates together. That make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
And I'm not such a skeptic, but it just seems so, knowing the world, seems so...
I know, it seems so far away, right? It seems so... And the reason is because we haven't yet materialized this. We haven't yet materialized this. Even if we're preaching
We haven't yet materialized?
We haven't yet materialized this. Otherwise, the world would be a Shevet Yotzar, as it says in Isaiah. It would be settled.
Right, I mean, there's billions of people on the earth.
The chapter two days ago in Tanya, the beautiful chapter
we're a little bit
about
You're saying on Sunday, the Sunday Tanya?
Sunday Tanya on healthy organ, about health.
Beautiful.
You missed it. It was I hope you. I know we learned it. He brings a metaphor about a healthy body.
And then he goes back to tzedakah.
What makes a body healthy? And then he takes that metaphor and says, what I've really been talking about is the universe, the cosmos. What makes the cosmos? So what makes a body healthy is that each entity in the body, number one, is healthy, right, on its own. And part of its health is that it understands how to interoperate with every other body.
Blood flow.
Yeah. So it uses the blood flow, right? The food comes in, the liver, main organ of the liver, is to take the life force from and leave back the dross. That's the whole digestive process. And then the life force goes from the liver to the heart and the brain. And it's interesting, brought in Chassidus, that these three items, they're called Moyach, Lev, and Kavod, spell Melech. So what's a Melech? A Melech is someone who has the interests of the whole at heart. So if each one of us get to a point where our self-interests are interests that allow us to be more a part of a whole, or maybe put it even more differently, when each one of us get to a point where we realize that our true function is to be an integrated part of a whole, so then we will have a healthy body, a healthy universe, a healthy community. So I have to say, I mean, we haven't really got the message.
Is it enough for the consciousness to be a God consciousness, but it's not coming from a Jewish source necessarily, even though everything comes from Torah, but like you have a lot of religious people that aren't Jewish, but they're just religious and they're conscious of God and godliness, not necessarily in a Chassidus type of way, but they have mysticism, they have spirituality. Is that enough? Or it has to be specifically Chassidus, it has to be specifically...
It's enough if, and this I happen to be fairly versed in this because it's a project of mine. What do the non-Jews have to know? They have to know. Well, they have to know God first of all. I mean, the first of the Sheva Mitzvahs is not to curse God. So not to curse God means that you have an understanding. You don't curse and kick something that you love. So you have to come on to knowledge and love of God. And the Rebbe says in Sicha very clearly that all the nations of the world have to learn Chassidus, because that's the truth of how to understand what you call spirituality. If their spirituality is emes spirituality, not sheker, fine. And where is emes? It's still ein emes el Torah. The source of the Sheva Mitzvahs is in the Torah's Moshe. And it's explained in the Gemaras, etc., etc. So
but you have Christians
and Hindus and everybody
Testament,
else,
but
right?
They're not getting it from.
So I have a Hindu at work, and I speak to him about this, and he's very open. He doesn't give me any pushback whatsoever. He worships certain gods, and I tell him, it's amazing. First of all, as a result of that, he lives a very healthy. He eats very healthy. He's monogamous. The family is very together because they have a sense of something higher than themselves that they have to serve.
Right.
But when I talk about him, about that, not the hierarchy, what's the I don't know what the right word is. When you have he's working down here, and these things do have influence. We know them as always have influence.
But they have the celestial.
Right. And they go up to spiritual levels. But I tell him, but there's something at the top. He says, we know. We know there's something at the top. And we know without that something at the top, none of this stuff would have any effect. But that's not their religion. But he has to know. He has to know that the Abeda Zorah is Zorah. It's strange. So,
but knowing Hashem, and from what we've learned even in Chassidus, is understanding the Seder Histalshalos, understanding the way Hashem
they're
communicates with our
supposed to
world
understand,
and all that.
yes.
So
They need to understand.
You're saying because it says we shouldn't teach non-Jews Torah.
What?
Teach
Yeah.
him Chassidus.
But
Because
what?
it teaches him about.
So, but isn't Chassidus Torah? Isn't Chassidus
Chassidus
like
is about the
the
one
deepest
that's-
depths of Torah?
There's a nice. I hope we want to go down this road. It's a sideline, but you have to. The label that's given to a Jew who observes the Sheva Mitzvahs to be amongst the righteous of the nations, you have to know. This is a law in the Torah that all the teachings come from Torah and Moshe and from Moshe Rabbeinu, and were given to Moshe Rabbeinu by God. If you do them simply because you want to, that's not the tzedikah u'nesayim. That's the beginning. It's like we have ourselves, like Metaik Shaloi L'Shema Bo L'Shema, that which doesn't start out for the ultimate reasons. Eventually, it will. So they have to know that these things originate in Torah. I'm having a conversation now that may be dead-ended with this guy. He's the president of a think tank in Washington it's called the Ethics and Public Policy Commission in Washington, which advertises itself as promulgating Judeo-Christian ethics.
So this is a governmental organization?
No, it's a non-governmental organization. It's a private. It's composed of some of the most famous Jewish, Catholic, Protestant thinkers in America that write for all these journals, right? Okay. And our conversation was going somewhere until it seems that I started looking into the group. The group mainly has a Catholic orientation. So even though it advertises Judeo-Christian ethics, it's really centered
that means not Jewish.
on Christianity. No, I know the guy, Ryan Anderson. He's not Jewish. I knew he was not Jewish at the start, but I thought he might be open to, but he's really not. But anyway, it's interesting that there is such an organization, the Ethics and Public Policy Commission, which is trying to influence the government to implement policies which are more in concert with, quote, Judeo-Christian morality. Now, I lost your question. What was your question?
Is it enough for them to learn Torah from their sources? The answer is no. They need to learn it from...
They have to learn it from us.
Right.
Yeah, we're the teachers.
So why are we not out there proselytizing this?
Well, maybe you want to join me in my campaign, right?
Weren't you working with
one-person campaign?
Alter about that? Weren't you doing something with Alter about that?
Yeah, maybe we'll put this offline, okay? You can come back to it.
This is interesting.
Definitely passion of mine, but I don't want to spend the night on it.
I just want to add one tiny little thing. It says, Torah tziva lanu Moshe. Morasha kehilas Yaakov.
Okay.
Morasha, could you tell everyone? Morasha that engaged Yaakov? So the Torah is an engaged woman.
Yeah, we are the engaged. We are the betrothed of God, the Jewish people, no other people. That doesn't mean other people don't have any relationship with them.
Like maidservants.
They do. We just happen to be the wife.
Isn't there a chayav misa for? Isn't a chayav?
Is chayav misa for learning those things which are not shaykh to the non-Jew.
Which are?
A non-Jew who keeps Shabbos, for instance. That's one of the things. That's chayav misa, right?
What does that mean?
Not shaykh to keep Shabbos. It is shaykh to a non-Jew to know that there is.
If a non-Jew keeps Shabbos?
What?
If a non-Jew keeps Shabbos, it's punishable by death?
Yeah, that's I don't know.
Defamation,
Let's
we
put
don't
this
kill people.
really, okay? We'll put this aside.
Okay.
Well, there's a lot of time to talk about some other thing. Okay. Ois Yud.
May I share a joke before we move forward? That has to do with what was just said?
She's there.
Yes.
Very good joke.
Hi, Lisa.
So there's a non-Jew who really, it appears as though he's Shomer Shabbos. And finally, someone says to him, I'm sorry, but there's a problem in what you're doing. You know that you appear to be keeping Shabbos. You want to keep Shabbos, you need to be a Jew. If not, you don't belong keeping Shabbos. He said, but every Shabbos I carry something. And so the person says, yeah, but there's an Eruv. He said, but I don't hold by the I'm going to put myself back on mute again.
Very cute.
Nice to hear from you, Eliza.
Thank you. Anybody want to pick up Ois Yud?
That's too typical.
Anybody?
It's very Jewish.
I can do it.
Okay,
Go
go.
for it, Elisha.
Al Pi Kol Hanal.
Apikol hanal,
Yud.
according to everything we said
Yud,
above,
this is Yud, right?
מוסברת בתוספת ביאור תורתו של המגיד.
It's from Russian sova. It's logical. Yeah, well, I should translate, right? According to what we said above, it's logical, reasonable. The additional explanation of how we explained earlier, the explanation of the Maggid's articulation about that the spirit stayed with Yaakov and the Mamish went to Esau. And he said it right before Yud Tes Kislev, which was the day he passed away, the Maggid. And it's understood also the relationship of this Torah that the Maggid said about Malachim Mamish to the redemption of the Alter Rebbe on Yud Tes Kislev. Because on that day, Yud Tes Kislev, the Alter Rebbe, a new thing came into the world. The actual application of the Baal Shem Tov's, of the Mashiach saying to the Baal Shem Tov that your well springs have to spread to the outside.
Even though, I see. Hey, shalom.
So before that, it was just in conception. It wasn't physical, like it wasn't in the world.
It was more than a conception, but it was amongst where you're talking about the Baal Shem Tov.
Yeah, which is
the Baal Shem Tov.
Do you have extra copies?
Yeah, I do have extra copies. John, welcome.
Hi, John.
This is my last copy. Oh, it's okay.
אנחנו בפרק י'. Okay. How is my Igbo? Okay?
Good. No?
It doesn't. The numbers don't make sense, you know. It's 525, 523, and then 5331. 531. Again, the numbers don't make sense.
I'm glad you need it.
So we have a question. You have a question there. You asked the question. Repeat your question.
Until this point, when
Which point? Alter Rebbe?
Yeah, when he passes away, it was only in conception, and once he passes away, it became possible for it to be in the world, for it to be carried out.
No. It was in the world. It was in the world by the time of the Baal Shem Tov, right?
So then, what was Nitchadesh?
What was Nitchadesh is that instead of being the way he put it before, instead of that all of your deeds should be l'shem shemayim, there was Nitchadesh is b'chol derech echad hayehu.
But at that point, it changed over.
You got that, right? Yuridas HaNeshama Lamata. The descent of the soul below, the purpose of which is to rectify, clarify, fix the body and all the portions of the world and make them a dwelling place for God. So that's similar. It models the expression of Yaakov sending out Malachim to Esau. Because what was the purpose of it? To rectify.
Yaakov sent Malachim to Esau in order to rectify Esau?
To rectify Esau. That's the goal.
Like to give him a chance.
The goal
right?
is to, the way Shlomo HaMelech expresses it, is to bring out the Yisron HaOr Min HaChosha, the advantage of light that's in the darkness. In the darkness.
Well, we because he didn't want to kill anybody. I thought it was because he didn't really want to kill anybody.
Who?
Yaakov. He didn't want them to come because he didn't want to take away.
He didn't want them to kill him.
Well, that's the
Is that what you're saying?
No, that he
was
didn't
afraid
want to
of
kill he didn't want to kill them. He didn't want to be in a position to take away.
Yaakov didn't want to be in a position to take Esau's life? Is that what you're saying?
Or any of them, any of Esau or his men that were coming towards.
So what was his intention? How did he want to accomplish that?
By sending the Malachim to persuade Esau somehow.
To persuade him to put down his weapons, to make peace. Those are, you might call each of them an aspect of what it means to Mevarim and Soisis, to rectify the sparks. That instead of being full of warfare and anger, what's it say about in the future? That our weapons will be turned into plowshares. That's what he wanted. That's also a metaphor for what we call Mevarim and Soisis, to rectify, clarify, bring out the holiness, the godliness that's being perverted by the coverings of darkness that bring out people's anger and warfare, etc. There will be no war. right? And we will study war no more. So it's all the same thing.
It's like using the iPad, rectifying everything that we have for God.
How does the iPad do that?
Because
teaching Torah.
You're
using
it. You're
right, rectifying technology.
I want to just talk about the Alter Rebbe has a mimer in Likutei Torah on Parshas Vayishlach where he talks about Yaakov and Esav and how Yaakov is Tikkun, which is like Ares Me'otim V'Merubim, and then Esav is Taihu, which is that he has a great light, but he doesn't have the right kelim. So essentially,
but by the way, just stop it. That's the secret. That's one of the secrets of why we want to do this.
Right.
Because Esav is huge power, and if that power can be translated from violence into what?
So essentially, that's what I wanted to ask you was, how come? I mean, then Yaakov, his intentions were that he wanted to bring Mashiach. His intentions were, listen, I corrected myself while I was with Lavan for these 14 years that I was working for Lavan, and he wanted to see where Esav was holding if he had corrected himself, and then they could bring the two together, the great light and the fitted vessel. How come we had to wait like thousands of years in order for Chassidus to come out instead of it like?
How come?
Yeah, no, I'm saying like,
question on God.
If Chassidus is the way to bring this great light into the right kelim, if this really is the Tikkun Olam, this is the way to correct the world.
So the simple answer is that's the question that you can't ask because that's God's.
Well, obviously, right.
But on the other hand, Vifum Saragra, according to the amount of difficulty, is the value of the reward that comes out of it. So, according to the depth of the darkness and the extent of time of the darkness, the light which will be revealed will be that much more powerful.
Well, who is Esav nowadays? Isn't that
it's
Edom, right? It's America. It's
the incarnations of the Roman Edom and the Roman mentality. And I thought about this a lot, so I'm just going to say what I thought.
Right.
Because I've not heard this, but it seems to me. What was the greatness of Rome? Technology.
I was going to say that it wasn't built in one day.
Bridges. Bridges. That's how they conquered everything.
You say.
Huh?
You just say.
Yeah.
They were able to, weaponry, sophisticated technology of weaponry, of transportation, of edifice, of building, etc., etc. That's what they did. That's what they brought to the poor. It's like
materialism.
It's like the British bringing the musket to the Indians. That was another story. It didn't work out so well for the British, but it worked out well for the Romans. Right? So who in the world? Let me ask you, who in the world?
Right.
Who in the world epitomizes technology?
You like that? Thanks.
Who in the world?
I'll be here till 10 o'clock.
Technology? Well, China now, but yeah.
Yeah, but China but it was the U.S.
Israel also.
Yeah.
What'd you say in the back?
The first world country.
Israel's number one in technology today.
Well, number one. What are the first world countries? The number ones, the ones that have mastered technology.
Sure.
And that's the incarnation of Rome. And to the extent, and I've really thought a lot, to the extent that the technology becomes the fixation, and the utilization of technology that has to do with edification and morality is not on the table at all. Not at all. It's just the strength of the technology. I mean, 2 days ago, last Thursday, Mark Zuckerberg renamed and reinvented in his own smart guy.
He's a yid.
He was streaming on Facebook. He is a yid.
Right,
that's the irony.
He reinvented his company.
He called it
Meta.
death.
Why is he calling it
Meta?
Have you? You've seen all you guys always reference the Matrix, right?
Yeah.
Everybody references
Facebook is now Meta?
Facebook is now Meta.
Get out.
No, Facebook is now a subsidiary, and it's not exactly a subsidiary. It's a part of a larger company called Meta.
Whoa.
The company is Meta.
Okay. I was thinking we should start a program called Techia. I was thinking we should start a program called Techia.
The opposite of Meta, because Meta means maybe she's dead.
Dead.
Yeah.
Dead.
So why did you call it Meta?
Yeah.
He calls the Metaverse for something, I guess, this is another tangent, but I guess it's worth talking about.
No, you wanted to
It's
say something
worthwhile.
about it.
You've heard of the Metaverse? You know what the Metaverse is? The universe, the Metaverse?
Multiverse.
The multiverse,
More like Marvel.
the universe beyond.
Yeah.
Now, we are talking about the universe beyond. This is the universe beyond. But the Roman technological vision of the Metaverse is everybody is subsumed in virtual reality
To disconnect.
until there are no boundaries
Yeah.
between real reality and virtual reality. And,
Okay.
and what's the purpose? Fun. Feeling good.
It's the death of humanity.
It's the
Literally,
death of
It's
humanity.
self-serving.
Death of connection.
Self-serving.
It's the self.
When I
Selfie.
want, I mean,
iPod.
when I was first involved, I used to be involved a lot in developing the technologies for companies.
Yeah.
And, I had a
selfishness.
fantasy. At one stage of it, we'll be able to call up menus, kosher, right? And the food would come out of the phone. Because that's what happened in Star Wars. In what?
I want to teleport.
No,
That's
beam
what
me
I
up.
want to do.
What's that
Star
program?
Trek.
Star Trek.
Star Trek.
Right?
Wow.
Well, and it's logical. I mean, what is food? It's just a collection of molecules and
Oh, it's like Willy Wonka.
subatomic particles. So
Right.
we'll just reconfigure them into, and broadcast them, and then reconfigure them over here.
Just hook yourself
That's
up to an IV.
William
Okay.
Shatner. That's interesting. They took
No, they
William
did that in
Shatner
Willy
to outer space,
Wonka
right?
also.
Because it's something that the mind can conceive of. That there'll be no difference between virtual reality and physical reality. Not necessarily evil in itself. I mean, and just like technology is not evil in itself, but when the vision of it doesn't have the divinity that's involved, but just in the pleasuring, and as you said, the yaciousness, the filling my heart. It's the funniest thing to me is when people go into a restaurant and say, "I need a burger." I don't need a burger.
If it's
You
burger,
want a burger.
If it's
You're
a burger,
polishing
needs
for a
the
burger.
burger.
You don't need a burger. What?
no, I was kidding.
It's not one of the basic needs.
The hard part about all of this is that, and remember we were talking about how now they have computers that can actually read your dreams and translate your dreams.
Right.
If they can do that, they can reverse it as well. Meaning that
Your
whatever it is
dream,
that you're using can now alter your reality instead of you creating the reality within that metaverse or whatever it is. It can now get into your head instead of
What's
you
the
controlling it. It'll control you. It's
Oh,
like it literally is the
They
Matrix.
control my dreams. They can control my dreams.
If they can read your dreams, if in a computer now there is a computer that can read your dreams and print it out and translate
They
it.
read what's going on in your brain.
They can read. Yes, there is.
Well, there are computers now that you can put on apparatus and think, and the words come on the screen.
Yeah.
What?
Yep.
Yes,
Is that what
right now,
ALS?
today.
Is that what the?
There's
United
something-
Harvard
I
is
don't know
using?
what
No.
I don't know what technology he's using.
No, I don't think that technology is
I don't know
available
what
for
he's
people yet.
Usher
I
Chris.
was telling you,
know
Rabbi
Usher
Chris. That's
right?
where I
That's
heard it
where you
from.
heard it from.
Because that's what he
His
does.
kids are using it.
But that's what he does.
Right.
And so he was explaining how they have literally that can print out a picture of what you're dreaming. So if they can do that, they can reverse it.
How is that even possible?
So that's the Roman Empire, where technology is pushed and pushed. It's all about technology, and with no morality and
So
certainly
Israel
no
is
divinity.
controlled by Rome?
Huh?
Israel is controlled by Rome?
Wait,
No,
before
no.
we say there's no morality, I think it's what it's used for. It's sort of like the Gemara, where there's a discussion about the Roman roads, because as you said, Rome built the technology, the roads, the aqueducts.
Yeah.
And the question is, were the roads in order for the Romans to have conquest, or are the roads in order for us to reach the base medrash, for us to reach
Right.
whatever the
Elisa, you're
and it's the same thing with technology.
You're absolutely right. Technology is utilitarian and valueless. And I mean, from a perspective of ethics, it's neutral. That's the word I'm looking for. It's neutral.
Right, and it's the vehicle, however we use it.
Right.
And I don't know if anyone else was participating or watching the convention of Shluchim, but the first that was announced when it came, I always love the roll call. For me, I find the roll call so
messes up the stage.
Like cyberspace.
So hard.
Kabbalah of cyberspace.
Cyberspace, yeah. That was the first thing he said.
Well, I have to tell you a secret. I was a backdoor neighbor of Yossi Kazin, who Yossi Kazin passed away. Yossi Kazin was the founder of Chabad Lubavitch in cyberspace.
Wow.
So he and I were pretty close. And I was involved in developing technology that ultimately became internet technology. And together we did this thing called Festival of Light. It was the first internet experience that Chabad.org ever organized. And it was a Hanukkah thing. And this was in 1995, 1 year after the browser was invented by Mosaic and Netscape. And we put this thing together, 8 branches of the Menorah, each one, you click on a branch and each one was a different trip. And we hand-coded a spinning dreidel so that you could click on the dreidel, and if you got your points, one of my jobs was to go out and enlist a Judaica supply store to give gifts for people who...
Wow.
And
Super cool.
And it was an amazing project, and it became, for me, like a model of virtually everything I did after that in the realms of technology. But there was an example. I'm not extolling it for my own sake, just an example of how that technology could be used. Chabad.org itself is an example of using technology, which is neutral, in a holy way.
Right.
So, that's not Rome. Rome is great at developing technology, and Jews, real Jews, are good at...
Real Jews?
Real Jews, ones who are not Kol Ma'asecha L'Shem Shemayim, but Kol D'Rechecha V'Yehu. That's all of us, real Jews.
Some shade.
The reality of all of us, right? If that's applied to technology, that's my project, by the way, to develop a social media marketing machine for the Chevra Ahavas.
Oh, yeah?
And I'm trying to find anybody else who's interested in it. Yeah, that's my project. Okay.
That's my father.
Where are we at?
He'd be interested?
Maybe he's into, he's a computer programmer.
Yeah, no, I need, another sidetrack.
There's
a lot to talk about.
Look, I got someone from the social media from Chevra, so maybe I can, maybe we can talk.
Okay. Okay, shame. Back to our story.
Back to us.
So, but your question is a good jumping off point. What it means chutzah, right? We're emphasizing this chutzah. What goes to the chutz? Not just the person in relationship to the world, but the person and the world become one. That's the chutzah, that the world becomes conscious of its divineness, or divinity. It's elokus, it's godliness. וכשם
שהשליחות של יעקב אל עשיו הייתה צריך להיות דווקא על ידי מלאכים ממש.
And just like the shlichus of Yaakov to Esau was malachim mamish, which we've already touched up above, right? Bringing the spirit to the world so that the world becomes spiritual. It gets transformed. And certainly not that one's involvement with the world has a negative influence on you who's not coming to the world.
כמו כן, הוא גם בנוגע לשליחוס של הנשמה לברר את הגוף והעולם.
Right, so just like using the same metaphor of the malachim mamish, the spirit and the flesh connecting as one, so this is also the role of the neshama, to mavara the guf, to rectify the guf and awaken the guf to the body, awaken the body to its true existence, which it is that it's only existing as an appendage in the divine organism of creation, and is meant to do its part for the health of the organism, which is in parentheses, which, as Esther pointed out, that Esau belongs to the world of Tohu, and Yaakov belongs to the world of Tikkun. Do we need to have a word about that, or we're good with that? Tikkun and Tohu? Okay. But again, the important thing in this mimer about Tohu is the strength of it, the power of it. I mean, till now, the power of the sword prevails, the power of the rocket ship, the power of the, sophisticated weaponry, right? But there's power. But suppose all that were weapons to kill the negativity, to kill the Yetzer Hara, weapons to propel oneself to deeper levels of connectivity and consciousness with God, right? That would be the elevation and the realization of the power of Esau, as Esau is brought into Kedusha.
אשר זהו דווקא על ידי שהאדם מעורר בעצמו את בחינת המלאכים, את
So how is this
הרוחניות
done?
שבו.
By each and every one of us giving power to, what's the word he uses?
בחינת
Arousing in each one of ourselves the malachim, the angel of ourselves, the neshama of ourselves.
spirituality of ourselves.
Yeah.
שעל ידה דווקא יכול הוא לברר את ענייני העולם. Through the spirituality דווקא he
And that goes to your question. And with that, if each one of us did that, individually and then all of us collectively, that would mavar, that would rectify all the problems in the world. I have a little meme that I have on my phone that someone sent me. You don't see the microphone, but it's a reporter whom you don't see face to face with the Rebbe. And he asked the Rebbe, what's your message to the non-Jews?
Oh, yeah.
And the Rebbe, without missing a beat, says, world peace is attainable if the non-Jews do the 7 mitzvahs.
Wow.
World peace.
World peace.
World peace. Levar es in yoni ani.
So then it sounds like there's not much the Jews themselves. What about
so
Ahavas
what's our
Yisroel?
job?
What?
Is it even wherever he spells it all out? All these sikhs in the mems. He spells
I'm saying
out.
like if that's what he pointed out, the Rebbe didn't. It's not like the Rebbe said, okay, when everyone gets along. No, he said, but after the Sheva mitzvahs b'nei noach, he's talking to that the non-Jews should do the Sheva mitzvahs. He didn't say anything. I mean, at first glance, he didn't say that the Jews need to have Ahavas Yisroel.
He doesn't ask what the Jews. He was
he's asking what the non-Jews.
His question, what's your message to the non-Jews?
Oh, okay, fine, never mind.
And that was his message to the non-Jews.
Yeah, but
that world peace is achieved when they all do that. And you could ask, so what's our job? And there's other secrets in this. It's a metaphor where if you're planting something, you first have to plow the ground.
Till the soil.
So the Sheva mitzvahs make the world ready. They bring the world to a state where we can bring God, what's the word? The famous from the Midrash. Make a dwelling place. That now the ground is ready, and we can make a dirulei sport of the taktaina. So the two will go together. And many seekers where he said, again, you got me off on this tangent, that this is a prerequisite for Mashiach.
I'm in grad school. I could share the Sheva mitzvahs. If you give me some information, I'll share it with my classmates.
Okay, we'll talk about it. Okay, we'll go through that.
Yeah, but the directive of people, to influence people, that world peace would be beneficial for them. But
yeah, that's another story, right?
A lot of people don't care about world peace. Right. They want to dominate.
That's correct. That's correct.
And a lot of people won't believe it comes to the 7 mitzvahs.
You're right.
So many people are so open to hearing about God
nobody
now.
knows. Listen, I've had
crazy.
conversations with people like this, and because I have to in order to get a reality test. What are you telling me? First of all, I'm talking to a Christian. I have a religion. You're telling me there's another religion that I'm supposed to be? No, that's no good. That doesn't work.
But how would you react? Similarly.
No, I wouldn't. I'd say much. So, again, I don't want to get sidetracked, but part of the mission of what I'm trying to do is collect and create messaging that's appropriate that resonates with people. Right? That's part of what we're trying to do here, right? Is turn what's on the paper into something that we can walk away with and say, oh yeah, I got something from this class. Yeah, I get something from this class. Okay. You want to continue?
Yeah.
What time is it?
It's probably
I'm hoping we would finish this secret. You guys getting me off on the side?
Oh boy.
Okay. And since
שבירורם של העניינים הגשמיים יכול להיות גם באופן של כל מעשיך לשם.
Now, since the rectifying the world can be done according to the first level, which is the normal level that we do, that everything in the normal level, that everything should be l'shem shemayim, for the sake of heaven.
שאז הנשמה פועלת בגוף רק באופן של שליטה והיעלם.
And what that really means, yeah, it's a good thing, but the neshama, its effect on the body is that it's dominating, it's subduing, ruling over.
It is ruling the body, but it's secretly ruling the body. But no, we can't tell that it's the actual spirituality that's ruling the body.
Right.
That's l'shem shemayim. עד שהגוף ואת כוחותיו של הנשמה המלובשים בגוף והעסוקים בו ועל ידי ענייני העולם.
Yes. So this is the powers of the neshama, which are enclosed in the body, which is busy with them. With the bodily affairs.
What's he?
Al yodom, through these powers which are invested in the oil. You're taking the powers of your soul and you're investing them in the affairs of the world by treating the world the way Torah wants you to treat the world.
What is he?
Is it harehu?
Harehu?
Oh. Harihem.
הרי
So
הם
there, yeah,
מציאות התוספת מקום לעצמה.
yeah.
וזה ביאר המגיד בפירושו. I don't understand what I'm reading. שתכלית הכוונה בעניין
We'll go
הבירורים...
further.
That's the first.
שתכלית הכוונה בעניין הבירורים הוא דווקא כשכוחותיו של הנשמה...
All right, so let's go back.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So you're having an effect on the things in the world, right? The affairs of the world are taking a place. You haven't melded completely that there's just godliness. You're not living with the consciousness of Ein Od Milvado. I'm a Jew, and I've got a mission to do, and here's something I can do it with, this piece of water, drink of water, right? But the glass of water is taking up a place, right? It's what was the expression? It has a metzius of its own. On this, the Magid in his explanation explained, is that the whole end game, the whole purpose of the berurim, the rectification, is dafka that the powers of the neshama, which are occupied in physical things, these are the malachim in their shlichus to Esau, that you do it in such a way. Yes, there are things in the world, but these things in the world really only exist for me, you, each one of us, to come to them and bring out their godly intention. What's the purpose of this water? That I should become healthy. What's the purpose? I should be healthy in order to serve God. What's the purpose of this piece of fruit? The purpose of the piece of fruit is for eating. It was designed for eating. And why does God want me to eat this? Again, so I'll get a certain nutritional value that my body needs in order to serve Him. But they're secondary. They're important, but they're all subsumed. The nefesh elokis is shalit over them, is ruling over them. So that's the purpose, that the ruchnius should rule over the gashmius, that the malachim should rule over the mamish. Malachim. This is when Yaakov sent angels to Esau. So Rashi says malachim mamish. They were really angels. They weren't men. They were angels. And the whole Sicha began with an explanation of the Mezrach Shemagid's interpretation of that. What's another meaning or inner meaning of Malachim Mamish? Not just that they were angels and not men, but the angelness of them, their spirituality, had to influence the Mamish, the Mamoshes. And not that the Mamoshes should...
לא היה existent אולי ממשות. Existence. The thing that was mamash didn't really exist.
Yeah, that's the second. You're good. That's the second stage. The first thing is it really exists, and I have to do something to it. I have to utilize it for kedusha. The second stage is what you're saying, that it really doesn't exist. Nothing exists except God. Right. That's the second stage. But this is the first stage. That the that the stuff that you're working with is only a mamish, only something of course, this kind of thing, and you have the ability to influence it. That the stuff should become nullified, bottled, secondary, and completely united with the spiritual of the neshama.
So that's a totally different way then of looking at the sense that Yaakov and Esau were both to be buried on the same day. Because without Yaakov in the world to be mistaken the mamish of Esau, then Esau had no purpose to exist.
That's right.
Am I understanding this correctly?
You are understanding it correctly. And it relates to the questions that were asked earlier. What's the purpose of the darkness?
Right.
The darkness knows this deep inside. There's no secrets in the dark.
What came first, the light or the dark?
It's both. It's both ways in the Torah.
Some say that
first it says
darkness is
and then he created.
First it says he created light, right?
Wow.
Right, and then it says Night and it says light and day. But then in another pasuk it says day and night. So this is a big topic in Chassidus. I'm sure you've come across it. It depends on your point of view. Okay? So put it this way. On the physical plane, we have energy and matter. Right? Energy and matter. Einstein told us in one little equation that they're really interchangeable. Energy equals matter times E equals mc squared. They're really interchangeable. So which comes first and which is secondary? Primary, secondary depends on your point of view. So the most interesting thing is that God, in his infinite wisdom, when he thought about, if you could say such a thing, what he wanted the Gashmis.
Physical.
He wanted this physical world, right? Now to create it, he had to put energy into it. And energy is light and kalim, lights and vessels. He really wants the vessels. So since he really wants the vessels, this is first get step one. You got step one. His vision is all about livro. It rose up in his mind to create, right? So to create, he envisions the lowliest of the low, the planet Earth with all of its dirt and everything that's in it. And why? So that's where he's invested, and that's the secret of why the Gashmi is so powerful. Atomic energy. Where does it come from? It comes from the fact, combustion energy. Why does you can light something and it gives energy? Because God has invested himself in it. The divine energy is invested specifically in the low. And that's why he wants a dwelling place in the lower world, because that was first in thought. What's first in thought is last in deed. So the last in deed, the physical, represents what's highest in his thought. The darkness precedes the light in his thought. In the act of creating, the light comes before the darkness.
So mechatchila, the light comes before the dark.
It depends what you're talking about lechatchila. In his first way of thinking, the first thing he thinks about... Yeah, the first thing he thinks about is not the light. The first thing he thinks about is Olam Hazeh with a person on top, on the planet. That's his tachlis. That's tachlis. Put it this way: if you want to go to Hawaii, right? What's top of your mind? I want to go to Hawaii.
What are you going to do there?
Hawaii.
What are you going to do there?
And I start thinking about all this stuff. That's what's the most important thing to me. So the most important thing is Hawaii and what I'm going to do there.
But what do you have to do first?
Now you have to get there.
Right.
So get there is a process. And that's the process, first Or and then Kalim.
Right. But what was the Ibur? מה היה קודם? מה היה העיבור הראשון?
מה היה קודם? Achav v'kedem yitzatoni. It's a pasuk in Tehillim. First and last you created. It depends on how you're looking at it.
Now it's תחילתן וסופן, אבל מלכתחילה הקדוש ברוך הוא אור אין סוף.
In the beginning, there was the Ein Sof. Before there was any light. There was just the Ein Sof, right? And then the Ein Sof decided that in order to create stuff, I'm going to have to do something. And what did he do? He let loose this Or Ein Sof. So you see the Or.
So
look at it now.
Wait,
think
so
about
what
this.
you're saying is basically.
Yeah, go ahead.
Is that. Because she was asking you about Esav. Esav had no existence without Yaakov, right?
Yeah.
Something like that.
Well,
no, he has an existence. It's just that his existence is chaos.
Choshev has a mamushes, right? How? You have everything in davening. You say Yoitze Eru Borei Choshev. He formed light, and he created darkness. We're used to thinking of darkness is a creation. It's a very. I mean, there's a lot of stuff.
People always think that darkness is an absence of light.
אם הוא ברא מלאכים ממש, and the מלאכים are making the ממשות בטל במציאות, nullified. Then from מלכתחילה they didn't have any existence.
Who?
Because whatever it is.
The stuff that they're mevaring?
If the malachim.
The malachim also had no
אמרת
existence.
malachim ממש, right? And I asked you, what does it mean? And you explained to me that basically they're affecting the mamashut in such light that the mamashut
Let's stay with
nullified.
that. Think of the malachim as a light shining into the darkness.
So I'm saying
right?
if they can shine up to a scale that it's nullified, then from the beginning there were no existence to לדבר.
Well, you're right. From that point of view, you're
אז
right.
אם יש no existence לדבר, אז לחושך has no existence.
Except that it does.
In עולם העשייה it does.
But
why does it? We think that, and as you said, most of us think that darkness is the absence of light.
It's not.
Right? It's nothing.
Darkness is
No, it's the absence of light.
This is nothing. You take away no
comes
light,
from
you
light
get
and it
darkness.
finishes with the
But it's
light.
not anything, right?
Okay, yeah.
But the Torah doesn't say that. The Torah says, "Yoitze or uboirei chaysha." He formed light, and he created darkness. Darkness is a creation. Now, just think. I mean, I know it's astounding to think about this when you first get into it. And another little thing that's latent in those two words, and I'm sure you're nodding because you've learned this, that Yetzirah, there's a world called Yetzirah, and which is the higher world? Bria. So which is higher, darkness or light?
Darkness.
Right, Yisr and Armeh.
Darkness.
That's exactly it.
But it's בדיוק כמו גם יעקב ועשיו, שאומרים ש...
I don't get Hebrew.
Yeah.
No, she's saying that it's just like Yaakov and Esau, but
No, wait, I didn't finish.
So that's the darkness
I'll
is
translate.
I can speak English too, don't worry about it.
Okay.
That Yaakov,
אני לא נוהגת.
I just want to make sure people will speak Hebrew too. So Yaakov was the second one to come out.
What?
Yaakov was the second to come out.
He was the second guy that came out. Right, there's another point, right?
Okay, so the Gemara
Which was created
he was
first?
the Ibur Rishon. He was the first one to conceive.
Yes, but in
So
terms,
he's the
so
first.
that's it. It depends
It's the
how you
same.
look at it, right? If you look at who came out
So I'm
first,
saying, בעולם העשייה, in this world of the physicality world, there is an existence of darkness. But if we would leave this world without Chassidus, then we would say, yeah, it's true, there is such an existence.
Right.
But I'm saying, out of the point that we are studying Chassidus, I'm asking to the depth of the things. Is it באמת existence? Like
Yes.
according to Chassidus?
Yes.
yes,
Wait, what do you, Shani? In the world of Atzilus, darkness and light are the same thing.
נכון.
There's no like only light.
בסדר.
There's no differentiation. Only down here we see that differentiation.
you actually said it, because in conception,
Well, what came first? The darkness.
the darkness.
נכון.
Okay, that's it. That's nachon,
אבל-
and that's emes.
But the darkness has higher light than the light.
Exactly.
Okay.
You got it. You got it.
כל הכבוד.
Right.
Yisron ha'or min ha'choshen.
הוא חמודה.
Yeah,
Black light.
Black Lives Matter.
We have black light, right?
no black light.
Black hole.
lights
What
matter.
time is it?
It's 9:45.
It's 9:45. Gee, we didn't finish the Sicha.
What
I
are
mean,
we
you
gonna
can
do?
This is a sentence you
We,
always say when
well,
you
let's.
study
Can we?
a
You have. I'll just finish the ones. So I'm just going to finish this
Okay,
particular
go for it.
ones. Okay.
Okay.
So we got ratchet number 1 is Kol Masechah L'Shem Shemayim. There's other stuff, but we're going
Feeling
to.
ratchet?
Okay, that's the first ratchet. Before Shlav. Right. Shehem, and that things that there's stuff. There is stuff out there, right? There is stuff. But it's the failing of but it's meant to be nullified, clarified, rectified by the neshama. Now you should know that even the highest levels of the neshama, hamayin the neshama, which is what we talked about, the big deal, the fountain, not the water, but the fountain of the neshama, shilamayla mirslapshes b'nei gashmi, in which the fountainhead is higher than being enclosed in physical things. That is me'ira u'misgala ba'oifen shel hafotza. That's what is meant to be revealed. And that's the second shlach, the Rosh Hashanah of Chassidus, the next notch. Not just that we are meant to bring our godliness to the world, but the world is meant to be informed in such a way that it realizes there's nothing else beside God. The oifen shel hafotza. That's what we have to do. We have to bring that out. Mispashas built in Mubelis in a way that without any limitation into the bechinas of chutza mamish, into the outside.
Amen.
That's the end.
Amen.
It's not the end of Sicha, but it's the end
But
of
it's the end of
tonight.
Okay.
And the Sicha, what I would do next work is move on to the minor. Well, we
Yeah,
could-
it's
we
the
could-
Timer.
It's a mimer in Yitis Kislev Tovshin Lamed Ches, Pada B'Sholem Rashi, by the Rebbe. So now you know, for your flyers, you know what we're doing.
You have to,
We're still doing Yitis Kislev.
Type it out so I can copy paste.
Yishlach. Is it Parshas Vayishlach now? No, it's Tovos.
No, it's Tovos.
Okay?
Can I ask what
Continue for another 3 hours.
Oh, cute.
I know. We all could.
For buses,
We all
for
could.
Not those.
Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you so much for
Thank you
having us.
guys for coming down.
Thank you.
Really, we'll see you
Thank you,
tomorrow.
Rabbi.
Okay.
Guys,
Maybe it could be a late night, so we'll see.
Oh, right. Sunday and Sunday and Wednesday. Marie, good to see you.
Guys, tomorrow, don't forget, I don't know if if you're available, but tomorrow I host a study group for Shar B'Tachon.
I saw, look at this.
Amen.
Look at
2:30 in the afternoon, though. I don't know if you're
One of those
working,
just
right?
arrived at my house.
So
last
2:30 my house tomorrow. I have books here. Somebody donated.
Wow.
So it's our third class tomorrow. So Chazaka.
Wow, beautiful.